Story 1. Has anyone watched Ragnarok on Netflix? The first couple of seasons were really cool. The last season was good. And then the last episode made me say, I can't believe I wasted all this time watching this show. Story 2. Carnivali. Great show, great cast, phenomenal unique world building, atmospheric as can be, ended on a monumental cliffhanger. Unlike Deadwood, it's never getting a wrap-up movie. Story 3. I would say How I Met Your Mother. I love the humor of this series, with the memorable characters and the creativity of the story. However, the final season, particularly the last episode, left me feeling let down due to the way it wrapped up the long-running storyline. Story 4. Death Note should have ended when L died. You can't build up such good tension between two characters for so long just to kill him off and have the audience work to develop sympathy and attachment to new characters that are literally just a shadow of L. Story 5. I liked the first season of Pretty Little Liars, but never could go beyond the second half of season 2 because it turned to mush. I've heard about the ending and the rest of the seasons from YouTubers who explain the entire plot to me, and that was a way better experience than watching it. Also, in general, a lot of Roberto Aguirre Sacasa because the first season is fun and then he doesn't know what to do anymore, so it becomes really repetitive. Story 6. If I enjoyed it, I will always recommend it. I remember watching Carnivali with my friend, and we both were obsessed with it and recommended it to everyone. Another friend watched it because of us and got really mad after watching the finale because it was cancelled and left some things unsolved. I don't really care. I would rather watch a great show with a bad ending than a mediocre show that I don't care about with a great ending. Story 7. I loved Game of Thrones for its epic storytelling and characters, but the ending was such a letdown. It felt rushed and unsatisfying, so I cannot recommend it to anyone looking for a good conclusion. Story 8. I'm thinking about Game of Thrones. The whole series is a masterpiece with intrigue, battles, and dragons, and the ending is like a spoiled cake that fell apart at the last second. Story 9. Battlestar Galactica. I really dislike that they landed on Earth. I feel a better ending would have been a time loop where they end up being the 12th colony they were following from the beginning. Story 10. Game of Thrones is the only answer in my opinion. This is the show where the final episodes were so bad and just wasted so much plotting and character development that after completing, it felt like it was a giant waste of time to watch the whole thing. Shows like Dexter and How I Met Your Mother have awful final seasons, but they really don't diminish the enjoyment of the earlier episodes and seasons, and they can be enjoyed without ever knowing how the shows ended. Thinking about other shows mentioned here, I think The Office had a drop in quality, but it was still an okay sitcom, just not as good as it had been. I think Lost is such a fun watch that even if you don't like the ending, it was a fun ride. Story 11. Two of my favorites of all time had final seasons that were just a bizarre shift in tone and stakes. Babylon 5, okay, we're worried about interstellar war and the end of everything, we stop it, and a whole season about how a government department is corrupt. Felt more like a spin-off than a continuation. The Wire. Genius seasons about police officers, drug dealers, and corrupt politics. Then a final story about a dishonest reporter making up sources? It would have worked fine if they had interleaved it through the other seasons, but on its own, it was such a letdown. Story 12. The 1990s TV show Dinosaurs is a typical funny television show where they showcase what a typical family of dinosaurs would go through if they were sentient. The ending episode features all of them going extinct due to something they did, reminiscent of climate change. It's an incredibly jarring ending to a funny TV show. The show was supposed to be set 60 million years ago, as if they knew from the beginning that's how it was going to end, but it has to be one of the saddest endings ever. Story 13. I highly recommend anyone to watch Season 1, which, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. Every episode ends on such a good cliffhanger, and it was so addicting. Season 2 was okay. The rest was absolute trash. Story 14. The Watcher. I know it's based around a true event, but my God, the whole TV show is a cliffhanger, building up the tension, just to end without giving even a hint of what could be a possible solution. Story 15. Season 5 of Gotham was terrible. Riverdale wasn't a great show per se, but it had that so bad it's good quality about it. However, that last season was just unbearably bad, in my opinion. Even for that show, I have no idea what the showrunners and writers were thinking with that last season. Everyone knows about the infamous lottery season of Roseanne. That was pretty unwatchable. Story 16, The Flash, its first few seasons were good. But the showrunner change practically doomed things. What sucks the most is that the writers involved are extremely capable, but they put their own interests above what was good for the show. Introducing their character they made for the comics, writing in a character as a self-insert and then giving them a romance plot. Story 17. Okay, so I have read, I think, 200 comments, and none of them, as far as I have seen, have said this one. The Owl House. I love The Owl House, and I still recommend it to others, but the ending was rushed, mostly due to cancellation. But at least we got an ending. I wish we could see more of Luz and her friends in the human realm and not just one episode. How do the classmates feel about Luz changing 3 times? I want to see Gus try everything humans do, like ride public transport and such. I honestly wish it was longer, and I also really want to see more of the Collector talk with other people. Story 18. I understand why they had to commit to the ending, but after 8 or so years of brilliant storytelling that made people laugh and cry, to spit in the face and flip the story on its head is just poisonous. Stuck the landing with Barney, though. Started out as a character similar to Tucker Max and then went layer by layer to find a really brilliant person. Story 19. Game of Thrones and How I Met Your Mother. Both shows that I really loved. Both completely botched the landing to a point where it retroactively ruined the rest of the series. I still haven't bothered to rewatch either of these, and I doubt I ever will. What's the point when I know it ends poorly? Story 20. The new series in the United Kingdom called Night Sleeper is brilliant and fast-paced. But I was disappointed by the ending. They had so many character options to choose from for the ending, so it was a slight letdown. Story 21. I would say the Korean drama Sweet Home had fantastic graphics, but the whole storyline seemed overhyped. Season 2 sort of lost its spark and did not have a suspense element that would keep viewers hooked. Story 22. I still recommend it. Wentworth. It's not the show ending, but a certain season finale where it ends for me. I've heard it's still good, but I can't watch after that. I'll rewatch the show up to that point, but not after. And I'll recommend the same for others. Story 23. The Blacklist. I loved the mysteries and definitely loved the characters, but the ending was just god-awful. Felt really rushed, didn't make any sense, and left us with a lot of loose ends. Story 24. Scandal. It got super crazy, but it was still damn good until around the last season and a half or so. The ending, without saying anything of the final season and its failures, was hot garbage for the story that was being told throughout the whole show, I feel. Story 25. Inversely, I'd suggest saying Dark. It started strong, and then each subsequent season got worse and worse, but I kept watching because I was invested. Somehow, they managed to tie that mess together with an ending that was both satisfying and made sense within the world they created. Story 26. Not going to lie, it would be The Flash. Everything was really good in the early seasons, but I want to say once the Future Kids popped up, I just started losing interest. Then I couldn't even bring myself to start up season 9 because, wow, it just got so bad. Story 27. I really did not care for the ending of Netflix's Sweet Tooth. I loved every second of it up until the last few episodes. I know it followed the comic it was based on to some extent, but I never read that. Story 28. My honest answer is Devilman Crybaby. I mean, maybe the ending has a message, but the delivery made me so incredibly angry at how bad it is. It's not worth the suffering. Also, where is Dark? The writers must have been on something during the last season. The mystery wasn't even there in the end. Story 29. Many of the names here, I thought of them as bad from the start. Some didn't even reach to see the ending. Some really great shows, though, with less than okay endings. I'd keep the list for myself because I don't want to tell people that the show they liked didn't only suck at the end. Story 30. Going to have to preemptively say The Witcher. There is maybe a 5% chance they can produce quality work, and even if they do, it will still be such a jarring and strange change of leads to be distracting regardless. Story 31. The Shield. Not that it was a bad ending artistically, but you get so involved with the strike team only to see them turn into a sad sack of it that it's hard to watch. Story 32. I'd still recommend it, but the last few minutes of Battlestar Galactica really reshaped the series in a way that I felt cheapened it. I'm not sure what I would have preferred, but it's still a great series up until then. Story 33. I think a lot of people would say, Lost. I liked the ending and felt it might have philosophical meaning, but I think most people would think they just didn't know where they were going with the story and just wrapped it up. Story 34. One tough show for me is Northern Exposure. I would recommend it if someone agreed to stop on the last Joel episode. Felt hollow after that. Not bad, but also incomplete. Story 35. Wonder Egg Priority. The ending is one of the reasons. The other is the self-harm scene in episode 7. Also, Panty and Stocking's very last-minute plot twist gets an honorable mention. Story 36. Boardwalk Empire. This show was incredible when it first came out. The first 4 seasons were unreal, providing constant entertainment all the way through, at least for me. Season 5 wasn't as good as the other seasons, but I thought it was doing well throughout most of it until the last moments of the last episode. I just felt so hollow. The ending felt like something that should have been building and hinted at, but in execution, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. It wasn't awful, but it was so mediocre I legitimately can't recommend anyone watch it because it's just so deflating. I think a bad ending may have even been better, and with how little I see it mentioned, I really think that ending just helped erase Boardwalk Empire from everyone's memories. Story 37. Off the top of my head, I would say The Blacklist. Great show, great performances, but the finale of the series is pretty underwhelming. Moreover, the finale of the show isn't as bad as how everything with the lead character resolves. They could have had a great ending, but they clearly didn't want to stop making the show, so they pushed on for 2 more unnecessary seasons. Story 38. Guy's parents inadvertently sell his soul to the devil. Once Guy turns 18 and discovers this, the devil essentially makes him a bounty hunter, tasked with returning souls that have escaped from hell due to overcrowding. It was really a fun show within the supernatural realm. Guy is a good person, so he seeks a way out of his bond with the devil. At the end of a season, he and his girlfriend devise a plan to challenge the devil to a game in order to win back his soul. They believe Guy has an advantage in the game. However, something of equal value needs to be wagered for the devil to win if he prevails. So they bet the soul of his girlfriend. The game takes place, and the devil wins, claiming the soul of the girlfriend as well. The season ends there, leaving the audience on a cliffhanger, with the expectation of renewal to resolve the situation. Unfortunately, the show gets cancelled, and the story remains unfinished. There is some information from the showrunners about what they would have done if it hadn't been cancelled, but it falls short. Story 39. There was a show I loved called Ascension. It was advertised as a miniseries, but it ended on a cliffhanger and was not meant to be made as a miniseries but as something with multiple seasons. Story 40. Lost, Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, basically any show with a bright idea of a premise, risk-taking, but where it's very clear they had no idea where to go with it and ran out of ideas, treating the last seasons like they're flushing away a failed effort. Story 41. The acting performances are spectacular. Not just Lee Sung-ji and Bae Suzy, although they are both just as great as you would expect. The whole ensemble is top shelf. The plot is riveting, the action is off the charts great, the production values are amazing, the soundtrack is incredible, but the ending is so bad it literally invalidates all of it. I wish I had not invested the time or effort. Story 42. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad both. Stop Better Call Saul 3 episodes before the end, and stop Breaking Bad halfway through the last season before that stupid, eye-rolling plot coincidence where Hank discovers Walt is the meth king. Story 43. A few examples. Once Upon a Time, How I Met Your Mother, Scrubs, Community, and the list is a lot longer. All good series have one thing in common. The last season sucks. Story 44. Mr. Robot. I cannot believe the writers came back from something like a 5-year hiatus to finish the series with him waking up in a hospital bed and the whole show being his other persona. Story 45. Phenomenal show. It did for nerds what The Big Bang Theory could never in a million seasons have accomplished. A pity that the postscript for the series is Zachary Levi is a nerd traitor and a fascist. Story 46. The best show that I loved but would never recommend due to its ending is Lost. It was all thrilling mysteries and emotional character arcs until the last season decided to pull a surprise. It was all a dream twist on us. Now I just feel like I was duped into watching an elaborate campfire story that ended with and then they all vanished. Thanks for the journey, but I'm still lost on the ending. Story 47. Breaking Bad comes to mind. I spent 5 seasons rooting for Walter White, convinced he was a genius antihero. Then that finale hit, and I realized I had been cheering for a guy who literally cooked his own downfall. Now I just recommend it with a warning. Great until the last 10 minutes. Then it's emotional whiplash. Story 48. Lost. The first couple of seasons were great, but then it just went off the rails and seemed like the writers kept throwing in more and more weird elements without any plan for how it would come together. The last season, and especially the last episode, were so unsatisfying.